Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in right now, you are likely juggling, well, a dozen different things.
Oh, probably a million things on there.
Right, exactly. You might be glancing at a to-do list or swiping away a ping from your calendar app, or just trying to navigate your day in our hyper-connected, fast-paced world of 2026.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. And you are what we like to call the learner. You want the insight, you want those deep aha moments, but you absolutely do not have the time for information overload.
Which is ironic because today we're looking directly at the very tools you use to avoid that overload.
Yeah. And the core of this deep dive is a fascinating paper. It's called The Extended Mind: Mechanisms and Risks of Cognitive Offloading.
It's a fantastic piece of research, really eye-opening.
So our mission today is to figure out how outsourcing our memory to external tools, I mean, everything from a crumpled sticky note to the most advanced project management software, how that is physically and functionally changing how our biological brains operate.
Because there's a really delicate balance here, we have always used tools to help us think, right? Like ancient civilizations used clay tablets.
Sure.
But the sheer integration of digital tools into our minute-by-minute cognitive processes today is completely new. We're literally extending our minds into our environment to compensate for the very real biological limits of our brains.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Well, starting with that biological limit, the paper calls it the core bottleneck, which is working memory.
Yes. Working memory is basically the temporary workspace of the mind, and it is incredibly constrained.
How constrained are we talking?
Well, the paper points to Cowan's model of working memory, which suggests that humans can only hold about 4 distinct chunks of information active in their minds at any given time.
Only 4. That's
4.
That seems almost impossible given what we do every day. I feel like I'm holding 20 things in my head right now.
You might feel like you are, but you're actually just rapidly switching your attention between them, which is frankly exhausting. Those 4 chunks represent a hard biological bottleneck. Think about trying to hold a 6-digit verification code in your head while switching between apps on your phone.
Oh, I hate doing that.
Right. If someone interrupts you to ask a question, that code is gone. Maintaining those chunks requires constant active neural firing.
So if I can use an analogy here, it's not like the hard drive of a computer where everything is stored permanently. It's more like the brain's central executive is this busy orchestra conductor.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, and the conductor can finally focus on making the music sound good because they don't have to literally memorize every single note of the sheet music. They just read it.
Exactly. It's like the RAM on your computer. It's active processing memory. This brings us to Sweller's cognitive load theory. Every task you do has an intrinsic cognitive load.
Which is what exactly?
It's the base level of mental effort required just to understand and perform the task. When your mental RAM is full of things you're just trying not to forget, you have no processing power left to actually solve the problem in front of you.
So cognitive offloading is basically just dumping the RAM.
Essentially, yes, by externalizing the information.
Like writing it down.
Right, writing it on a pad, setting an alarm, typing it into a document. You bypass the need to keep those neurons continuously firing just to maintain the memory.
But does writing it down actually make a difference in the moment, or is it just saving it for later? I always wondered that.
Oh, it makes an immediate, measurable difference. The researchers point to dual task paradigms.
Which are?
They're classic psychology experiments where a participant is asked to do a primary task, like a complex math problem, while simultaneously holding unrelated information in their head, like a sequence of random letters.
Let me guess, they do terribly.
Performance completely plummets. But the moment researchers allow participants to offload that secondary info, just physically writing the letters on a piece of paper, their performance on the complex math problem shoots right back up.
That's wild. So writing it down actively liberates your attentional resources in real time.
It does.
You aren't just storing it, you're clearing the runway for actual complex thought.
You're shifting the brain's strategy from a highly demanding internal recall process to a very low-demand recognition process. You just look at the paper and recognize it.
Which brings up the tools themselves, because not all tools are created equal here. On one end of the spectrum, you have what I think is the absolute marvel of low-friction engineering, the sticky note.
Oh, the sticky note is genuinely a perfect piece of cognitive technology.
It really is.
It has 0 learning curve, it requires no software updates, and it's incredibly effective for what psychologists call prospective memory.
Prospective memory meaning remembering to do something in the future.
Exactly. Remembering to take your medication at 4 p.m. or remembering to attach the file before you hit send.
The bane of my existence.
Right. Prospective memory requires you to interrupt your current train of thought at a specific time or cue in the future. It's notoriously fragile across the human lifespan, and it degrades as we age.
But a sticky note fixes that.
A sticky note placed directly in your visual field eliminates that internal burden completely.
But then we have the other end of the spectrum. The massive, complex, multi-tiered project management software suites we all use at work. The ones that are supposed to organize our entire lives.
What's fascinating here is the concept of interface cognitive load. We adopt these high-friction tools, assuming they're going to do the thinking for us.
But they don't.
No, complex systems demand significant executive function just to operate them. You have to learn the architecture, navigate the drop-down menus, tag the right colleagues.
Find the right folder. Wait, but aren't these tools supposed to make us incredibly efficient? Because half the time I download a massive new organizational suite, I feel like my brain is melting just trying to find the settings menu.
Your brain is melting because of tool-based switching costs. The paper cites eye tracking data showing that in poorly designed software, users spend upwards of 23% of their time just navigating the interface.
23%.
Almost a quarter of your time is spent just looking for where to input the information rather than doing the work itself.
So the tool designed to save my cognitive load is actually consuming my cognitive load. That is brutal.
Precisely. However, the data also shows the inverse is true when a tool is built properly. When an interface aligns intuitively with a user's existing mental model,
Meaning things are exactly where you expect them to be.
yes. When that happens, it can actually reduce working memory load by up to 31%.
That is a massive takeaway for anyone listening right now. Take a hard look at the apps you use every day. Are they functioning as a seamless extension of your mind? Or are they literally a secondary job you have to manage? It's the ultimate productivity paradox.
It is. And when you get that alignment right, the benefits are undeniable. The paper quantified the upside of effective offloading across a bunch of domains.
Yeah, let's talk about those upsides because the stats in this paper are wild. I was looking at the task management section and it completely changes the math on productivity.
Yes, the data indicates that reliable offloading systems can drop missed deadlines by up to 30%.
Which is huge. That translates to reclaiming potentially an hour of lost productivity a day for a knowledge worker. And the paper says task switching reaction times improve by 18% too.
And it's not just time, it's physiological. Brain imaging studies demonstrate that robust offloading visually reduces activation in the brain's stress centers. It literally lowers your cortisol levels.
You physically relax when you trust your system.
Absolutely.
And in high-stakes environments, that translates to fewer mistakes, right?
I saw the section on healthcare.
Look at the healthcare data they provided. The implementation of systematic, offloaded checklists in surgical workflows reduced omission errors by 29%.
Incredible.
Furthermore, when teams use a shared digital offloading tool, team alignment improves by 40% and communication gaps drop by half.
That sounds like an absolute silver bullet for modern work.
It does, which is why we have to address the hidden dangers. Habitual over-reliance on these tools creates a very real phenomenon of cognitive erosion.
Okay, what's the first thing to go? The first casualty is usually our metacognitive monitoring.
Meaning our ability to know what we actually know.
Correct. When you constantly rely on an external search engine or a database, the boundary between the tool's knowledge and your biological knowledge blurs.
So we get cocky.
You begin to suffer from overconfidence. You think you possess the knowledge, but in reality, you only possess the ability to look it up.
Which is fine, right up until the Wi-Fi goes down.
Exactly. Another significant impairment is to spatial navigation. The heavy use of GPS applications is well documented to degrade our actual spatial memory. We stop paying attention to landmarks, we stop building internal maps, and our natural wayfinding skills just atrophy.
I can completely relate to that. I couldn't navigate my own neighborhood without a blue dot telling me where to turn.
Most people can't these days.
But the paper also mentioned something called automation bias, specifically in professionals. That seemed a bit scary.
Automation bias is incredibly risky. When an expert, say an airline pilot or a financial auditor, when they rely too heavily on digital prompts to guide their workflow, they stop actively monitoring the environment for subtle anomalies.
Because they're just waiting for the screen to blink.
Right. If a unique, unexpected emergency occurs, they lack the rapid situational awareness needed to adapt because they were just waiting for the computer to tell them what to do.
Add that to the sheer attentional fragmentation we deal with. The very device I'm using to offload my brilliant ideas is the exact same device that constantly interrupts me with a notification about a shoe sale.
It shatters your focus, which
Hmm.
is why system breakdowns are so catastrophic.
Right, and we've all had the everyday version of this. Your smartphone battery dies, and you suddenly realize you don't even know your partner's phone number. Or you rely on spell check for so many years that when you have to write a physical thank you card, your spelling is completely embarrassing.
We've all been there. But those everyday examples scale up to high-stakes environments, too. If a server crashes during a critical project phase and the team hasn't internalized the core strategy because it was all housed on a digital Kanban board,
The whole thing just grinds to a halt.
the entire workflow paralyzes.
So how do we draw the line? What exactly should we be pushing out to our devices, and what do we absolutely need to keep inside our own heads?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes down to the type of memory. The research points to two distinct categories.
Okay.
First, you have declarative and episodic memory. This is the what and the when. Arbitrary facts, historical dates, specific phone numbers, a recipe ingredient list.
The stuff that doesn't change and doesn't require deep context.
Right. Offload all of that. Put it in your calendar, your notes app, your databases, free up your biological RAM. But the second category is what you must never offload.
Which is,
Complex procedures and motor skills. This is the how.
but wait, why can't I just watch a video tutorial every time I need to fix my sink or write a line of code?
Because true mastery requires biological integration. It requires Hebbian learning.
Unpack Hebbian learning for us.
In neuroscience, the fundamental rule is neurons that fire together wire together. When you physically practice a skill, you're wrapping myelin around those neural pathways, making the signal faster and stronger. You are building automaticity.
So you can't just outsource that.
You can't offload the process of learning to play a guitar chord or troubleshooting a complex piece of code. If you constantly rely on a prompt for the how, you create highly fragile knowledge. You can follow instructions, but the moment the instructions are slightly wrong, you cannot adapt.
That makes perfect sense. Offload the what, internalize the how, and I imagine this hits differently depending on how old you are too. The paper dives into the age factor, which I found fascinating.
It's a critical nuance. For older adults, cognitive offloading is an incredibly effective compensatory strategy. As natural declines in working memory capacity occur, leaning on digital tools helps maintain independence and executive function.
But for kids growing up as digital natives, it's a totally different story.
Very different. The researchers look at this through the lens of developmental psychology, specifically Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. In this framework, tools should be used as scaffolding.
Meaning you use the tool to help the child reach a level of understanding they couldn't reach alone, but you don't leave the scaffolding up forever.
Exactly. If children over-rely on GPS, predictive text, and search engines during their formative neurological years, they never force their brains to build those internal executive functions. The scaffolding becomes a permanent wheelchair.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What is actually happening to the physical brain when we offload? Because the paper cites functional MRI studies looking at people who heavily rely on their devices. And they found something called hippocampal under-recruitment.
Yes, the hippocampus is a region deep in the brain crucial for forming new long-term memories and for spatial navigation.
And the fMRI scans showed that when people offload information, that area of the brain gets significantly less blood flow. It's physically doing less work. So are we literally shrinking our brains? Are we atrophying?
It's easy to jump to that dystopian conclusion, but the neuroscience community actually offers a much more adaptive perspective. We need to look at Wegner's theory of transactive memory.
Transactive memory usually applies to groups of people, right? Like how I know my partner will remember to pay the electric bill, so I don't even bother storing that information in my own head.
Precisely. We naturally distribute cognitive load across our social networks. What the researchers suggest is that we are now distributing that load to our technology. Our brains aren't necessarily atrophying, they're strategically reallocating biological resources.
So if the hippocampus isn't working as hard to remember a phone number, what is the brain doing with that saved energy?
The hypothesis is that the brain shifts that metabolic energy to the prefrontal cortex. That is the area responsible for higher order thinking, complex problem solving, and emotional regulation.
That's amazing.
In a way, your brain is so adaptive that it begins to treat your smartphone as a literal, physical extension of its own neural network. It trusts the device to hold the raw data so it can focus on synthesizing that data into wisdom.
So what does this all mean? How does the person listening today who wants to leverage these amazing tools but refuses to let their internal cognitive muscle turn to much actually pull this off.
The paper concludes that we must transition from passive users to active practitioners of strategic offloading. They outline 5 specific rules to achieve this. The first rule is metacognitive awareness.
Which means noticing your own mental state. The paper mentions the Pasaya scale for this. What is that?
The Pasaya scale is a widely used metric in cognitive psychology. It's simply a self-reported 9-point scale measuring how much mental effort you're expending. You don't need a lab to use it.
Just a quick check-in.
Right, you just need to build a habit of pausing and asking yourself, on a scale of 1 to 9, how hard is my brain working right now just to keep track of things? If you're at an 8 or 9, you need to externalize the data.
Okay, check your mental load. What is Rule 2?
Rule 2 is cost-benefit analysis. You must ruthlessly evaluate your tools.
This goes back to the interface cognitive load we talked about earlier.
Exactly. If you spend 20 minutes organizing your tasks in a beautiful new app, but it only saves you 2 minutes of actual biological processing time, the tool is a parasite. Discard it. Use a sticky note instead.
I love that. Tool is a parasite. Rule 3.
Prioritize internalization. We discussed offloading the what, but keeping the how. For the core competencies that define your expertise, you must engage in effortful retrieval practice.
Meaning you literally have to test yourself.
Yes. Put the phone in another room, close the tabs, and force your brain to recall the framework, the pitch, or the process from scratch. That friction is what builds deep, adaptable knowledge.
Rule 4 seems to lean heavily into how we learn new things. Scaffolding.
We mentioned this with children, but it applies to adults learning new skills as well. Use the digital checklist, use the AI prompter, but set a strict timeline for a gradual release of that tool. The goal must always be moving the external process into your internal neurology.
And the final rule.
Rule 5 is maintaining a lifelong learning perspective. Use your digital tools ruthlessly to manage the mundane friction of daily life. But you must reinvest the cognitive energy you save.
So don't just use the saved brain power to scroll social media.
Correct. Use that freed-up prefrontal cortex to learn a complex new language, master a musical instrument, or engage in deep, nuanced social debates. That is how you build long-term cognitive reserve that protects against aging.
It really is a masterful balancing act. You, the learner, have access to an extended mind that past generations couldn't even fathom. The ultimate takeaway from this research is that your technology should handle the noise, the scheduling, and the trivia. Let the tools do the heavy lifting of storage so your biological brain can do the beautiful work of synthesis and creation. Augment your mind, don't replace it.
This raises an important question, though. The tools we are discussing today, phones, wearables, screens, they still require physical interaction, but technology is evolving rapidly. We're standing on the edge of seamless brain-computer interfaces.
You mean literal implant?
Yes. If the offloading tool is no longer a device in your hand, but a microchip directly interfacing with your hippocampus and prefrontal cortex,
Wow.
where does the biological human mind end and the digital tool begin? If you can instantly, effortlessly recall any fact or memory from a neural implant, is that still your memory? At what point does the extended mind just become the mind?
That is an absolute mind bender. If